There's a certain kind of person who treats small things like they don't matter. A napkin, a ketchup packet, a shopping cart left in the parking lot. Tiny stuff. And most of the time, people ignore it because it's easier than saying something. This happened years ago, back when I was living in Ohio and working long hours at a medical supply warehouse. My friend Melissa and I used to grab breakfast every Saturday morning at this old-school diner called Maple Street Grill. It was one of those classic American diners, with squeaky booths, coffee that never stopped flowing, and waitresses who called everyone hun. The place wasn't fancy, but the food was good and cheap, which honestly made it perfect. Melissa loved that place, mostly because they gave out unlimited toast and had those little single-serve jelly packets sitting in a spinning rack at every table. Grape, strawberry, orange marmalade, apple butter, the whole lineup. Now, Melissa had a habit that drove me insane. She wasted things constantly. Not in a huge dramatic way, it was always little things. She'd grab 5 napkins when she needed 1, open plastic silverware packs and leave half untouched, take extra sauce packets at fast food places just because they were free. Her philosophy was simple. If the restaurant puts it out, they expect people to use it. I'd heard that speech 100 times. So that Saturday morning, we slid into our booth by the window while rain tapped softly against the glass outside. The diner was crowded with regulars, older couples, truck drivers, families with screaming toddlers. Our waitress, Denise, poured coffee into our mugs without even asking. "The usual?" she said. "Yep," Melissa answered. I ordered eggs, hash browns, bacon, and wheat toast. Melissa got pancakes, sausage, and rye toast. Pretty normal morning. At least until the jelly incident started. While we waited for the food, Melissa reached for the jelly rack. She grabbed a grape packet, peeled it open, looked inside, made a face. Nope. Then she set the open container down on the table like it was trash. I stared at her. She immediately grabbed another one. This time orange marmalade. Same process. Peel, look, no thanks. Another open container joined the first. Then she reached for a third. That's when I finally said something. "You know the flavor is written on top, right?" She paused mid-reach. "What?" "The flavor," I said. "It literally says it on the lid. You don't have to open them to figure it out." She looked down at the tiny labels like this information had genuinely never occurred to her before. Then she shrugged. "Well, whatever." I pointed at the 2 open packets. "That's kind of wasteful." Melissa leaned back against the booth with this completely unconcerned expression. "Not my problem," she said. That answer irritated me more than the wasted jelly. Not my problem. It was such a lazy attitude. Like because something technically belonged to the restaurant, it suddenly had no value. Meanwhile, some employee had to throw those away. Someone stocked them. Someone paid for them. But Melissa acted like the world existed to absorb every careless thing she did. I let it go because arguing over jelly at 8:30 in the morning felt ridiculous. Breakfast arrived a few minutes later. The food was great. Crispy hash browns, thick-cut bacon, fresh toast. Melissa drowned her pancakes in syrup and spent half the meal complaining about her coworkers. Apparently, one of them got promoted over her, which she claimed was politics. Personally, I suspected it had more to do with the fact that Melissa approached responsibility the same way raccoons approach trash cans. Halfway through breakfast, I noticed she wasn't even touching her toast. "You gonna eat that?" I asked. "No, too full." I nodded and went back to my coffee. When the check came, Melissa suddenly perked up. "Ooh, I'm taking this home." She started gathering leftovers into a messy pile near the edge of the table. Pancakes, sausage, toast, even the untouched toast from my plate. "You want your toast?" I asked. "Nah." "Cool." Denise brought over a foam takeout container and set it beside Melissa. "There you go, sweetie." "Thanks," Melissa said. Then she stood up suddenly. "I gotta use the restroom before we leave." She looked at me. "Can you pack this stuff up while I'm gone?" And right there, the universe handed me an opportunity. Not revenge exactly. More like culinary consequences. I smiled politely. "Sure." Melissa disappeared toward the back hallway. The second she rounded the corner, I looked down at those 2 open jelly containers sitting forgotten near the coffee mugs. 1 grape, 1 orange marmalade, both completely untouched. I picked them up slowly. Now, listen, I wasn't trying to poison her. I wasn't trying to ruin her breakfast. I just believed very strongly in avoiding waste. So I grabbed the leftover toast, spread the grape jelly across 1 slice, then layered the orange marmalade directly on top. Purple and orange blended together into something that looked deeply unnatural. Honestly, it smelled weird too. Sweet, citrus, artificial grape, like a children's cough syrup company tried making brunch. I closed the toast sandwich carefully and tucked it neatly into the takeout container with the pancakes and sausage. Then I snapped the lid shut. Perfect. A minute later, Melissa came back. "All set?" she asked. "Yep." She grabbed the container without looking inside. We paid and headed out into the rainy parking lot. As we walked to the car, Melissa kept talking about work drama while holding that foam container like buried treasure. I almost cracked up twice just imagining the moment she'd finally open it later, but I kept a completely straight face, because technically, I hadn't wasted anything. Batch 2. The funny part is, I didn't even think about the jelly toast again for the rest of the day. After breakfast, I went home, watched college football, folded laundry, and completely forgot the whole thing happened. Then around 7:30 that evening, my phone rang. Melissa. The second I answered, she said, "What the hell did you do to that toast?" I nearly dropped the remote laughing, but I held it together. "What are you talking about? That disgusting jelly mutant thing in the container." Now she sounded genuinely offended. "You mixed grape jelly with marmalade." I sat up straighter on the couch. "Oh, that. Yes, that." I tried to sound innocent. "You said wasting it wasn't your problem." There was a long silence on the line. "Then, you actually used those?" "Yup. You're insane." "No," I replied calmly. "Efficient." She groaned loudly. "It tasted horrible." "Well," I said, "good thing it wasn't wasted." Click. She hung up on me. I laughed so hard I had tears in my eyes. Not because it was some master revenge plan. Honestly, it was petty. Very petty. But it was also weirdly satisfying. Because for once, Melissa actually experienced the result of her own carelessness. Normally, people like her float through life assuming somebody else will clean up every little mess they make. Restaurants throw things away, coworkers fix mistakes, friends overlook behavior. There's never any consequence. Until there is. The next Saturday, we went back to Maple Street Grill again like usual. And the first thing I noticed? Melissa picked up a jelly packet, read the label, then opened exactly one. I nearly choked on my coffee. Denise noticed too. "You okay over there?" she asked. I nodded quickly. "Fine." Melissa narrowed her eyes at me from across the booth. "Don't start." I didn't say anything. "You were about to." I wasn't. "You had the face. The face. The smug face." I grinned. "Maybe a little." She pointed her fork at me. "You know, most people would have just complained. Most people don't believe in sustainability." That actually made Denise laugh. Melissa rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might detach from her skull. But here's the thing. After that breakfast, I started noticing how often Melissa did little wasteful things. Not because I became obsessed with it, more because once you see it, you can't unsee it. At the movie theater, she'd grab giant stacks of napkins and throw most away untouched. At fast food drive-thrus, she'd take handfuls of ketchup packets she never used. At bars, she'd order drinks, take 2 sips, and abandon them. It wasn't about money. It was attitude. She treated disposable things like they had zero value because she personally wasn't paying attention to the cost behind them. One afternoon, we stopped at a gas station during a road trip. Melissa walked out carrying an armful of those tiny flavored coffee creamers. I stared at her. "How much coffee are you quitting to drink?" She shrugged. "They're free. You don't even use cream. They might come in handy." They did not come in handy. 3 weeks later, I found melted French vanilla creamers leaking inside her backseat during a summer heat wave. I pointed at the sticky disaster coating the upholstery. "Looks handy." She hated when I was right. But slowly, very slowly, I noticed changes. Tiny ones. She stopped grabbing extra plastic utensils. She started taking leftovers home more carefully. She even returned her shopping cart once without being reminded. That one honestly shocked me most. I pointed dramatically across the parking lot. "Who are you and what have you done with Melissa?" "Oh, shut up," she muttered. But she was smiling. Years later, she actually admitted something surprising. We were at a barbecue with friends when someone opened 3 condiment packets looking for ranch. Melissa immediately stopped them. "The flavor's written on the label," she said automatically. I almost spit out my drink. She caught me grinning. "Don't. You became me." I absolutely did not. "You did. You're condiment conscious now. That's not a thing." "It is today." Then she laughed and finally admitted, "Okay, maybe the jelly thing stuck with me. Trauma changes people. You weaponized breakfast. I educated through breakfast." She shook her head. "You know what the worst part was?" "What?" "I actually ate half of it before realizing. I lost it laughing." Apparently, she'd been driving home after errands, got hungry, opened the container, and took a huge bite without checking the toast first. According to her, the first few seconds confused her brain. Sweet? Citrus? Grape? Then horror. Honestly, that made the story 10 times better. Batch 3. Looking back now, the whole thing sounds ridiculous. 2 adults basically fought a tiny passive-aggressive war using breakfast condiments. But those little moments stick in your memory because they reveal something bigger about people. Habits, character, mentality. Melissa wasn't a bad person. Not even close. She was generous in big ways. She'd help friends move apartments, loan people money, bring soup when someone got sick. But she ignored small responsibilities because she assumed they didn't matter. And honestly, a lot of people do that. They think waste only counts if it's expensive. But waste adds up. Restaurants throw away thousands of unopened condiments every year. People overconsume because individual actions feel invisible. One napkin doesn't matter. One sauce packet doesn't matter. One unopened jelly cup doesn't matter. Except millions of people think the exact same thing every day.
And eventually all those little things become giant things. Now, obviously, I wasn't trying to teach some deep environmental lesson at a diner booth in Ohio. I was just annoyed. And maybe slightly petty. Okay, definitely petty. But sometimes humor works better than lectures. If I had scolded Melissa for 20 minutes about wastefulness, she would have ignored me completely. Instead, she got surprised grape marmalade fusion toast. And somehow that stuck in her brain for years. To this day, whenever I see those little jelly packets at diners, I think about that breakfast. Especially because Maple Street Grill eventually became kind of legendary among our friend group, after Melissa accidentally told the story at a party. That was a disaster for her. Someone asked why she suddenly became obsessed with reading labels before opening condiments. Melissa tried dodging the question. Big mistake. Everyone demanded details. And once the story came out, people would not let it go. For years. At brunches, somebody would always say, "Careful, Melissa, read the lid first." Or, "Anybody want mystery jelly toast?" One Christmas, our friend Aaron actually wrapped up a jar.
A few weeks after the infamous jelly toast incident, Melissa and I settled back into our normal routine. Same diner, same booth near the window, same waitress refilling coffee before we even asked. But something had definitely changed. Not dramatically. Melissa didn't suddenly become some ultra-responsible environmental warrior who carried reusable silverware in her purse and composted banana peels. But she became aware. That was new. Before, she moved through the world like little things didn't count. Now I'd occasionally catch her pausing before doing something careless, almost like she could hear my voice in the back of her head. "You know the label's written on top, right?" It became a curse I accidentally planted in her brain. One Saturday morning, we stopped at a fast food place during a road trip because we were running late for a friend's engagement party in Indianapolis. Melissa ordered fries and immediately grabbed a giant handful of ketchup packets from the dispenser. Then she froze, slowly looked down at the mountain of packets in her hand, and quietly put half of them back. I stared at her. She caught me watching. "What?" "That was growth." "Oh my God, stop." "No, seriously, you voluntarily returned ketchup packets. This is character development. You act like I survived some spiritual awakening." "You kinda did." It was toast, not therapy. Still, I couldn't help noticing the changes piling up over time. Melissa started finishing drinks instead of abandoning them halfway through. She stopped opening things she didn't intend to use. At restaurants, she'd actually stack plates neatly near the edge of the table to help servers clean up. That one shocked me enough I almost took a picture. "You're evolving," I told her one afternoon. "I hate that you think you caused this. I absolutely caused this. No, I'm just being more mindful. Because of the jelly trauma." She sighed dramatically. "You're never letting this go, are you?" "Never." The truth is, the story became part of our friendship mythology. Every friend group has those stories that get repeated forever. The camping disaster, the missed flight, the terrible haircut. For us, it became the jelly incident. And somehow it kept getting funnier every time it came up. One night, a bunch of us were hanging out at our friend Aaron's apartment watching football. Somebody ordered wings and the delivery place forgot ranch dressing. Aaron dug through his fridge and tossed a random sauce packet toward Melissa. "Here," he said, "but make sure you read the label first." The entire room exploded laughing. Melissa looked horrified. "You told people?" I nearly spilled my drink. "I told one person. You absolutely told everyone. In my defense, it's a fantastic story." She pointed around the room. "These people are laughing too hard for this to be the first time hearing it." Honestly, she wasn't wrong. The story spread like wildfire because it perfectly captured both of our personalities. Melissa, chaotic and careless. Me, patient until suddenly extremely petty. That combination apparently entertained people endlessly. But underneath the jokes, I started realizing something else. Melissa wasn't actually irresponsible because she was selfish. She just never thought about consequences beyond the immediate moment. There are people like that everywhere. They're not malicious. They simply assume small actions disappear once they leave their hands. Trash tossed near a garbage can instead of inside it, shopping carts abandoned between parking spaces, coffee cups left on shelves in stores, tiny acts of laziness repeated constantly. Most people don't even notice themselves doing it. Melissa definitely didn't, until weird jelly toast revenge forced her to. One afternoon, we were grocery shopping together when I witnessed the clearest evidence yet that she'd changed. We passed a woman who casually picked up a frozen package of shrimp, changed her mind, and abandoned it in the cereal aisle. Melissa stopped walking immediately. "Oh, come on," she muttered. "What?" She couldn't put it back. I looked at her carefully. "Listen to yourself." "What?" "You're annoyed by unnecessary waste now." "That's because it's rude," she said automatically. Then she paused. Realization hit her face. I folded my arms triumphantly. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced dramatically to nobody nearby. "We got her." "Oh, shut up.
You crossed over to the responsible side. I still think what you did was psychotic. Maybe, but effective. She laughed despite herself. The weirdest part was how often she started catching other people doing careless things after that. Once your brain tunes into something, it's impossible to ignore. At coffee shops, gas stations, movie theaters, everywhere. One evening we were at the mall food court when a teenager grabbed a straw, unwrapped it halfway, then changed his mind and threw it away untouched before grabbing another. Melissa watched the whole thing happen. Then she quietly whispered, "Monster." I nearly choked laughing. "Welcome to my world. I hate your world." "No, you don't." She rolled her eyes, but she smiled. That's why our friendship survived the whole thing. Because underneath all the sarcasm and annoyance, we genuinely understood each other. Melissa knew I wasn't trying to shame her, and I knew she wasn't intentionally disrespectful. We just saw the world differently sometimes. She focused on big picture kindness. I focused on everyday consideration. Over time, we kind of balanced each other out. She taught me not to overthink every tiny inconvenience. I taught her that tiny actions still matter. Though admittedly, I used extremely questionable teaching methods. A few months later, the story reached peak comedy during Thanksgiving at Melissa's parents' house. This was my first time meeting some of her extended family. Big mistake, because Melissa's younger brother Tyler somehow discovered the jelly incident before dinner, and Tyler was exactly the type of sibling who weaponized embarrassing stories immediately. The second dinner rolls hit the table, he held up a jar of grape jelly dramatically. "Hey Melissa," he said, "want me to mix this with marmalade for you?" Melissa nearly dropped her fork. "Oh my God." Her mother looked confused. "What is happening?" Tyler pointed at me. "Tell them." Melissa slapped both hands over her face. "Please don't." Naturally, I told them everything. By the end of the story, her father was laughing so hard he had tears in his eyes. Her mother looked horrified. "You ate mystery toast from a takeout container without checking it first." Melissa pointed angrily at me. "Because I trusted him." "That was your first mistake," Tyler said. For the rest of dinner, every condiment-related action became a joke. Anybody labeled the cranberry sauce? Careful opening the butter. Who makes the jams? Melissa threatened to leave at least 6 times. She didn't leave, but she did glare at me across the mashed potatoes like she was considering violence. Honestly, worth it.
By the time a full year passed after the jelly toast disaster, the story had completely escaped our control. It wasn't just an inside joke anymore. It had become a permanent part of Melissa's identity in our friend group. She hated that, which naturally made everyone bring it up even more. One Friday night, we all met at a new brunch place downtown. Trendy exposed brick walls, overpriced coffee, avocado toast that cost more than an actual avocado farm. The kind of place where the menus don't list prices because they assume if you have to ask, you shouldn't be there. Our group grabbed a long table near the back. Melissa sat beside me, already suspicious. "I swear," she warned quietly, "if you mention jelly one time—" "I would never." "You're smiling already." "I just enjoy breakfast." "You enjoy chaos." Also true. The waitress came around taking drink orders while everyone talked over each other. Typical loud weekend brunch energy. Then the condiment tray arrived. Tiny jars of jam, butter packets, honey cups. The entire table went silent for about 2 seconds. Every single person slowly turned toward Melissa. Aaron broke first. "Guys," he whispered dramatically, "nobody open anything until we identify the labels." The table exploded laughing. Melissa slammed her forehead onto the table. "I hate all of you." Tyler, who had somehow become worse after Thanksgiving, picked up a jam container carefully like it was a bomb. "Okay, team," he announced. "We have raspberry here. Repeat, raspberry." Melissa looked up. "You know what's crazy? I could simply leave. But then who would monitor condiment safety?" I asked. She pointed at me. "This is your fault." I raised my coffee mug proudly. "And I regret nothing." The funniest part was that Melissa had become genuinely careful by then. Not performative careful, actually careful. She read labels, she cleaned up after herself, she stopped treating disposable things like invisible objects that magically vanished after use. One afternoon, I noticed her picking up someone else's trash at the park without even thinking about it. I stared. "You just voluntarily cleaned up a stranger's mess." She shrugged. "Well, somebody should." I nearly fainted. There it was, the complete transformation. The woman who once said "not my problem" about wasted jelly was now quietly fixing problems that weren't even hers. Not because I forced her to, not because she got embarrassed, because once she started paying attention, she realized small actions really do affect other people. That sounds overly dramatic for a story involving breakfast condiments, but it's true. Most people aren't intentionally inconsiderate. They're just disconnected. They don't see the employee cleaning tables after closing. They don't think about wasted food costs. They don't consider how tiny actions pile together across thousands of people every day. Awareness changes behavior, sometimes permanently. Of course, Melissa would never admit I taught her anything. Her version of events was very different. According to her, she simply matured naturally. Sure, and the Great Marmalade abomination had absolutely nothing to do with it. One summer evening years later, we hosted a backyard cookout at her house. By then, Melissa was married with 2 little kids, who sprinted around the yard like caffeinated raccoons. I was standing near the grill flipping burgers when I heard her yell from the picnic table, "Ethan, don't open another juice box unless you're drinking it." I slowly looked over. Her son froze mid-reach. "But I wanted apple juice." "Then drink the apple juice you already opened first." He sighed dramatically, like life had become unbearable. Melissa crossed her arms. "We don't waste stuff." The words hung in the air for a second. Then she noticed me staring at her again. "Oh no," she said immediately. I grinned. "You said the thing. Don't. You became your own worst nightmare. I'm being a parent. You're enforcing condiment discipline. That's not a real phrase. It is now." She shook her head while trying not to laugh. Then her daughter ran over holding 2 popsicles. "One melted," she explained sadly. Melissa crouched beside her. "Okay, next time only grab 1 until you're ready." Gentle, patient, teaching awareness. And suddenly I realized something funny. Melissa had become better at teaching responsibility than I ever was, probably because she understood what it felt like to learn the lesson the hard way, through humiliation and weird toast. Later that night, after the kids went inside, a few of us stayed outside around the fire pit talking. The conversation drifted toward old stories like it always does when people have known each other forever. Aaron brought up the jelly incident again, because apparently he planned to mention it until death. Melissa groaned. "We're still talking about this?" "Yes," Tyler said immediately. "Forever," I added. Melissa rolled her eyes but smiled into her drink. Then she surprised everyone by saying, "Honestly though, he wasn't wrong." The group got quiet. I looked at her. "You admitting defeat? Don't get excited," she warned. "I still think what you did was insane." "Fair. But," she continued, "I did waste stuff back then." Aaron gasped dramatically. "She admits it." "Shut up," Melissa said. Then she looked at me. "I think I just never paid attention before." That was probably the most honest explanation possible. Most careless habits aren't evil. They're automatic. People move too fast to think about tiny consequences until something interrupts the pattern. Sometimes that interruption is embarrassment. Sometimes it's experience. Sometimes it's accidentally eating grape marmalade mixed with orange marmalade during a traffic jam outside Indianapolis. Life teaches lessons in weird ways. The fire crackled while everyone laughed about old stories, and I realized something else too. The reason the jelly incident stayed funny all these years wasn't because of the prank itself. It stayed funny because nobody got truly hurt. No screaming fight, no ruined friendship, just a tiny moment that nudged someone toward being slightly more thoughtful. That's all. And honestly, the world could probably use more of that. Not prank revenge, not passive-aggressive toast sabotage, just people paying a little more attention to the small things, cleaning up after themselves, using what they need, thinking one step beyond, not my problem. Because small habits become character eventually. Melissa taught her kids that now, and every single time I watch her remind them not to waste food or open things they won't use, I have to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing, because somewhere deep in the back of her brain, whether she admits it or not, there's still a memory of that horrifying bite of grape orange toast, the breakfast mistake that changed her forever.